you listen to, or if you watch this video, the tragic story of AVEBOY SK.
Brianna Warner carried out her plan to lure 20-year-old Jay Parker Ford, also known by his rap name AVEBOY SK, out of his family's Lawrence Avenue apartment before shooting him dead on December 16, 2022. That audio recording was played in court. Warner can be heard yelling at her mom, "Remember when you asked me who shot that guy in the head? I did that. I have anger issues, so leave me the F alone."
Free Gennaro, free Ing. Bang.
Go just die, get it back in blood. Get back. Go get it back in blood. Yeah, Ching's on tour, get it back in blood. Get back. Go get it back in blood.
D5 millions. Yeah, D5 million in the chat. Oh my goodness. Wow. Shout out T5 million. I am reading my chat. Jeez, brother. Getting me all amped up for no reason. Toronto.
AVEBOY SK, born Jai Parker Ford, was a rising rapper from Orton Park whose name carried weight in his neighborhood long before his story made headlines. He wasn't a mainstream artist, but in the East End of Toronto, he was recognized for his association and the circle he moved with. But what most people didn't know was that SK had a past connection with a girl he once trusted, a connection that would later become the key to how he was set up and ultimately killed. Her involvement wasn't rumored, it was confirmed in her own recorded words, and the fallout from that setup.
Tonight it's like I have an issue. I'm trying to leave. I want to leave. Like I have an addiction on going out. This is bad. Yeah, but leave me alone. Leave me alone until I finish streaming. I got a couple more videos to watch. After that, I'll see. You know? I'm laughing like I'm not going out. Listen. I'll see. Leave me alone.
Spread quickly across the city. Tracks released by rival gang members, like Mrs. Backdoor, began surfacing online, hinting that SK had been betrayed from the inside, and fueling speculation that his death wasn't random, but orchestrated. What followed wasn't just another Toronto homicide. It was a case involving an undercover sting, secretly recorded confessions, and a motive rooted in a past SK likely thought was long behind him.
See the forensics truck parked outside this apartment building here at 3950 Lawrence Avenue East in Scarborough, where the shooting occurred around 4:45 this morning up in the 14th floor hallway. Residents on the 14th floor tell me they heard a single gunshot. The victim, a man about 20 years old, was found in the hallway. He'd been shot in the head.
Yeah. I think now it's like getting more federal and federal. Yeah. Quote unquote allegedly.
It was December 16th, 2022, at approximately 4:40 in the morning, when SK was shot once in the head outside his family's 14th floor apartment on Lawrence Avenue East near Orton Park Road. He was rushed to hospital but died a few days later from his injuries. Early in the investigation, police discovered that his phone showed communication in the hours leading up to the shooting with 18-year-old Brianna Warner. She quickly emerged as a person of interest, but investigators were not yet ready to
Brianna Warner. Isn't that what's this guy's name? The famous Brianna Nigga, that's the Warner's brother. You know the Warner the movie? Oh, she's even on the news. Holy, she's everywhere. She's well, I guess she's known.
Lay a charge. The break in the case came 2 months later, on February 19th, 2023.
Wait. Okay.
when Warner was arrested alongside 23-year-old Mr. Garcia Realtor after a dangerous police chase through downtown Toronto. At the time, Garcia Realtor was already bound by a strict 2020 release order requiring him to remain at his residence unless accompanied by one of his sureties and forbidding him from possessing any weapons. Nevertheless, on the morning of February 19th, he was driving a blue Mercedes with Brianna Warner as the sole passenger. When a Toronto police officer attempted a traffic stop for a missing front license plate, Garcia Realtor briefly complied, then suddenly executed a U-turn and accelerated eastbound on King Street West at high speed. The vehicle sped through a red light, nearly collided with another car, lost control, and crashed into a bike
That's not a Mercedes, that's a Honda.
rack before finally coming to a stop. Both Garcia Realtor and Warner fled on foot, Warner carrying a blue cloth bag. CCTV captured both holding the bag at various points as they ran through nearby streets. Officers located the pair minutes later and arrested them after a brief foot pursuit. A search uncovered a loaded Glock 26 down Garcia Realtor's pant leg, modified with a switch making it fully automatic, along with a 32-round magazine, all prohibited under the criminal code. The blue bag the pair had carried contained drug paraphernalia, 55 oxycodone pills, a loaded 9mm magazine, marijuana, an iPhone, and personal items belonging to Warner. A subsequent search warrant executed on the Mercedes uncovered another bag containing roughly $33,000 in cash, and in the trunk, 165 grams of powdered cocaine along with digital scales. Garcia Realtor later admitted the cocaine was possessed for the purpose of trafficking. For investigators, the arrest created an unexpected opening. Warner, now locked up on unrelated gun and drug charges, was isolated and suddenly accessible. Detectives placed 2 undercover officers, including one using the alias TJ, into her holding cell, posing as newly arrested suspects. Neither officer was given any details about the homicide and were instructed not to bring it up. Their role was simply to build trust. TJ, working off a cover story about being caught in a raid at a boyfriend's apartment.
That's crazy, they do that? I did not know feds, were included into the cells as well.
Connected with Warner. Almost immediately, Warner began opening up about her life, her relationships, and how she claimed she'd been making the band a day selling tasers and pepper spray online before her Kijiji account was shut down. She gave both officers her Instagram handle to stay in touch after release, and TJ, staying fully in character, told Warner she worked events and could help her line up a high-paying job. As the conversations continued, Warner gravitated toward TJ far more than the second undercover officer. She shared increasingly personal claims, including telling the officers she was pregnant by a wealthy 25-year-old Nigerian man, whom she alleged had her and given her an STD. Warner also claimed she was using the man for money, said she had plans to rob him with Garcia Realtor, and told them she intended to abort the pregnancy afterward. At the same time, she admitted she was only keeping the pregnancy because it gave her special treatment while in custody. TJ's handler later testified that despite being the less experienced operative, TJ had clearly built the strongest rapport. At one point, Warner even braided TJ's hair inside the cell, a moment investigators viewed as a clear sign that trust had been established. When Warner was transferred to the Lindsay jail, TJ stayed in contact through phone calls and visits. Warner confided that she didn't really have any friends, and as far as TJ knew, no one besides her and Warner's mother ever came to see her. Warner referred to TJ as a good friend, deepening exactly the level of trust investigators needed to move the operation forward. By early April 2023, police had secured judicial authorization to start recording TJ's conversations with Warner. On April 6th, TJ drove Warner's mother to the jail to pick her up after bail was granted. On the drive back to Scarborough, The Wire captured a heated argument between Warner and her mother. At one point, Warner snapped, "Mom, remember when you asked me who shot that guy in the head? I did that. I have anger issues, so leave me the f*** alone." At the end of the full 4-hour recording, TJ reassured Warner that she was glad she was out and promised to be there for her, and Warner replied, "Love you." After that, TJ's objective changed.
Oh, shit.
She was instructed to keep the friendship.
I seen chat said, "Hey yo, what do you mean flying?" I didn't see that.
Going, and if the subject of the shooting didn't come up naturally, to gently bring it up and see whether Warner would provide more detail. The very next day, April 7th, TJ went to Warner's home with small gifts, Fiji water for Warner and Easter chocolates for the younger siblings. A surveillance team stayed close by, and TJ was given safety words to trigger an emergency extraction if needed. Once TJ and Warner were alone in the bedroom, they talked about Warner's art, her plans to become an esthetician, boyfriends, her time in jail, and everyday things like makeup and nails. Then TJ shifted the conversation, asking what Warner had meant by what she said in the car the day before. Through bursts of laughter, Warner began laying out the details. She told TJ the name of the victim, when and where it happened, and said she used an ex-boyfriend's gun. She told the undercover that SK had messaged her to meet up, believing they were going to have some kind of sexual encounter in the staircase of his building. But according to her own account, when they met up and stepped out of the elevator in his Lawrence Avenue East apartment building, Brianna pulled out a gun and shot him in the back of the head.
What?
She said it took only one bullet, adding that she didn't want to waste any. During the same conversation, she also claimed that one of her exes had previously shot at Orton Park rapper Dope Boy DQ in a separate incident, saying she sat in a car and watched while DQ ran for his life. In an exclusive interview with Toronto-based podcast We Love Hip Hop, a juror from the Brianna Warner case revealed that during the undercover recordings, Brianna began singing lyrics from Rebound, a diss track by SK and Dope Boy DQ.
Listen, in my DMs, but don't wanna meet your bro got touched cause he thought it was sweet. We don't do no internet beef, my dogs pull up, leave him on the street. And we always keep it discreet, don't talk, let the street speak. For all of the options peak, but a new pack dropped just last week.
She allegedly told TJ that the bars in the song were all fake, insisting that the shootings and bodies referenced had nothing to do with them. She contrasted that with her own music, claiming she was the real rapper and that her songs were based on actual events. She then pulled up news articles about SK's murder and told TJ she had written a track called Brain Dead describing what she had done, treating the killing as inspiration rather than a tragedy. At one point she said she was happy after the shooting.
I don't know who wrote this, but this is good handwriting.
Even though he didn't die immediately. In parts of the recording the jury never heard, Warner went even further. She told TJ that before this incident she was only gang affiliated, but now she was literally a gang member because she had taken someone's life. She also spoke casually about wanting to kill another person in the future, treating the conversation like it was something she was proud of rather than something she feared. During that same unplayed portion of the recording, Warner brought up her past with SK, claiming that when she was 12 and he was 14, he had taken advantage of her sexually and said the shooting was her moment to take advantage of him in return. She presented this as part of her reasoning to TJ, even though no evidence supporting that allegation was ever presented in court. The tone of these comments, mixed with laughter and a lack of remorse, stood in stark contrast to the seriousness of the crime and became one of the most disturbing elements of the undercover recordings. During the visit, Warner took a phone call from a jailed man who began questioning TJ about where she was from. And while Warner was briefly out of the room, TJ quickly snapped a photo of the handwritten Brain Dead lyrics lying on the bed. The next day, Brianna Warner was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. For Toronto police, it was the culmination of a months-long operation that began with a cell block introduction and ended with a detailed confession on tape. But for the streets, Warner's arrest didn't mark the end of the conversation. It opened the door to a much larger narrative, one tied to a long-standing gang war in Scarborough. In the east end of Toronto sits the sprawling borough of Scarborough, home to dozens of neighborhoods shaped by years of social struggle, underfunding, and community resilience. Within it are Malvern and Orton Park, two different blocks with distinct identities, yet histories that mirror each other in ways that would eventually fuel one of the city's most talked about gang conflicts. The 44 movement is a crew that traces its roots to young men from several Scarborough neighborhoods, primarily Glendower and Malvern. The name 44 was adopted in honor of Glendower resident Kareem Deer, known as Remy, whose favorite number was 44. On September 23, 2016, Remy was stabbed to death by an Orton Park affiliate inside the Scarborough Town Center subway station at just 15 years old. His death became a defining loss for the neighborhood, and the 44 Remy gang was created in his honor, carrying his name forward as a symbol of loyalty and remembrance. Their biggest ops are Orton Park, Dolly Varden, and Regent Park. SK and Brianna Warner are from Orton Park, also known as 54, a name taken from the Lawrence Avenue East bus route that cuts through the towers and townhouse complexes near Orton Park and Lawrence Avenue East. The crews in this neighborhood, such as the Orton Park Bloods, developed its own identity under many of the same pressures shaping Malvern. It's unknown where exactly the beef between these two blocks started, but what is known is that over time, tensions hardened into open hostility, a rivalry that eventually spilled into music. Diss tracks became a secondary battlefield, where coded insults and street references carried real-world consequences. One of the most talked about examples was Rebound by SK and fellow Orton Park rapper Dope Boy DQ, a track that took multiple shots at the 44 movement. The back and forth only escalated after DQ was killed, shot by 44 member LB, an incident that intensified the hostility between both sides. Following his death, diss tracks grew even more aggressive. In Let's Play a Game Part 2, 44 rapper Sav directly references DQ's killing, alluding to the moment he was shot in his vehicle before crashing into a tree.
This bed not comfy, made out of dirt. Let's play a game called Who's Living Worse. Last vehicle I was in was a black truck. Last vehicle he was in was a hearse. Just after the doctor said that I'm good, but the last one died, he ain't seeing the nurse. He got hit in his head and his skull exploded. Whole shit, some got left on the curb. Not the I'd say it again cause kids don't learn.
Since then, things only escalated, especially after SK's death. 44 rapper KS Bands released a track called Mrs. Backdoor shortly after, and in the song he raps,
You thought this shit was love, she gave the job to where you hide.
a line widely interpreted as confirming that
This shit was love, she gave the job to where you hide.
A line widely interpreted as confirming that SK had been set up by a girl. The reference only fueled the ongoing speculation online, reinforcing the belief that his killing wasn't random, but the result of someone he trusted giving up his location. But as the music amplified the street narrative, the courtroom began revealing a very different story, one grounded not in rap politics or neighborhood rivalries, but in Brianna Warner's own personal motives. When the trial started, the rumors flying around online finally started getting shut down, and people began calling out 44 for talking about bodies and tracks that...
So she packed him, and the 44 been claiming that rec acting, like they put the shots...
had nothing to do with them. The evidence and recordings laid everything out, showing a clearer picture of why she went after SK in the first place. As the details came out in court, the whole situation hit way harder, exposing the real weight behind what happened. Inside the courtroom, the secret recordings with TJ became the centerpiece of the Crown's case, but both sides fought over how they should be interpreted. Testifying behind a screen, TJ told the jury that she first met Warner in February 2023, that she knew Warner was a person of interest in a homicide, and that her task was to build rapport. She explained how their conversations moved from casual topics like hair, nails, and relationships to more serious admissions once Warner trusted her. The jury heard the car recording from April 6th, where Warner told her mother she was the one who, quote-unquote, shot that guy in the head. They also heard the bedroom recording from April 7th, where Warner described using one bullet, shooting SK in the back of the head, and later writing brain dead about the killing. In his closing statement, Crown attorney Rob Fry told jurors that even if they were to disregard every other piece of evidence in the case, the recordings alone were enough to prove Warner's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, describing the details in those conversations as accurate and consistent with what happened. He said that for more than 2 years Warner had enjoyed the presumption of innocence, and that it was now time to hold her accountable. Fried also suggested that Warner may have believed nobody would suspect a small 18-year-old woman of pulling this off on her own, and that she nearly succeeded until police invented TJ. The defense saw things very differently. Warner's lawyer, Katie Scott, told the jury that what they heard on the tapes was not a genuine confession, but a story made up by an 18-year-old looking for validation. She argued that many of the key facts Warner mentioned, such as the victim's name, location, and timing, were already public knowledge by the time of the April 7th recording. Scott said other parts of Warner's story didn't line up with the evidence. Warner told TJ that SK never made a sound after being shot, but Jai's brother and the first officer on scene both testified that they heard him loudly moaning in the hallway after the gunshot. Warner also claimed that after leaving, she returned to check his pockets to see if he had a gun. Scott pointed out that SK's brother did not hear anyone else in the hallway, and that paramedics had difficulty moving SK because of his weight and the way he had fallen. If Warner had searched his pockets, Scott argued, his white hoodie likely would have been visibly dirted, yet there was no evidence of that. She also noted that TJ never asked Warner for basic specifics like what floor the shooting happened on, what each person was wearing, how Warner got in or out of the building, or what she did with the gun afterward. To the defense, this was not a careful, detailed confession. It was a loose narrative full of gaps and inconsistencies. Scott also tried to reframe the writings found in Warner's bedroom, including the brain-dead lyrics and another piece labeled AVEBOY SK Jai Parker Forward, which began with the line, SK got his dome pierced. She said these were examples of artistic self-expression, not literal evidence of guilt, and reminded the jury that SK's own brother had testified that SK's lyrics referenced murder, guns, and drugs even though he wasn't actually living that lifestyle. In that sense, Scott argued, Warner was doing what many young people in their world did, borrowing violent imagery for effect. She emphasized that people sometimes falsely confess, even to serious crimes, and suggested Warner had constructed a persona in front of someone she believed was a close friend. The defense argued that the police operation, with an undercover officer cultivating a lonely teenager's trust from a holding cell to her home, amounted to interrogation by subterfuge. Despite these arguments, Justice Alfred O'Mara ultimately rejected the bid to exclude the recordings. He ruled that Warner had not been interrogated in the legal sense, that TJ's questions were broad, and that Warner chose on her own to connect them to the homicide. In his view, Warner spoke about the killing in an almost gleeful manner and appeared to want others to know what she claimed to have done, even going so far as to write rap lyrics about it. With the recordings admitted, the jury was left to decide whether Warner was telling the truth or simply performing for attention. In the end, they accepted the statements as genuine. Throughout the proceedings, Brianna showed little emotion, often sitting back in her chair, rolling her eyes during testimony, and appearing detached from the gravity of what was being said about her. But the moment the jury foreperson stood and announced the verdict, her demeanor shifted for the first time. According to the juror interviewed by We Love Hip Hop, in the courtroom Brianna's face flushed a deep bright red, her expression tightening as the realization set in. She didn't cry, speak, or break down. The redness in her face was the only visible sign that the verdict had impacted her at all. It stood in stark contrast to the weeks prior, where she had seemed unfazed by the evidence and the allegations being laid out. On October 31st, 2023, the jury found Brianna Warner guilty of first-degree murder. She received the mandatory life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years, with no guarantee she will be released even after that point.
What? No guarantee she'll be released after that point. Oh, well, that's kind of scary. Wait. When the jury says 25, life. It means 25. It doesn't actually means life, right? That's what it means. Interesting video. I think I learned a bit.
I'm going hard, I need to go again. They call me slipping, fucking watch, but I don't slip again. That's why I'm out with my brothers till the fucking end.